Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me Domenique Rice. Dominique wears many hats. She is a staunch activist, laid back California transplant, savvy Brooklyn girl, superstar salesperson. But her most important role is that of a bereaved mother of 5. Dominique never had any reason to suspect that something was amiss in her second pregnancy, at least not until it was already too late. Like most parents, stillbirth and preventative measures were never discussed. Dominique, leaving her completely blindsided when she was 36 and a half weeks pregnant, she unexpectedly went into labor, and her second child and first son, TJ, was born still. In between her morning TJ coffee, where she holds space each day for her son, rocking a successful sales career and loving on TJ's living siblings, Dominique is passionate about sharing her stillborn son, creating stillbirth and child death awareness, and connecting with other child death families to support them in their non-traditional parenthood. Grief is not something that parents should need to hide. Stillbirth affects over 23,000 families each year, and Dominique is not willing to stand by while any of them are silenced for one moment longer. She supports Return to Zero Hope as a BIPOC support group facilitator, and also is the director of operations for Push for Empowered Pregnancy. Welcome to the show, Dominique.
Thank you so much for having me, Sharna.
You're so welcome. Did you want to, I know that was probably touched on quite a lot of what you do.
Yeah, I was like laughing as I was like, whoa, I did send that off. That was a mouthful. I think first off, once again, thank you so much for holding space in this beautiful community. And it's I feel so honored to be here to connect with you. And before we got started, we talked about just how important it is to talk about our experiences, to create awareness, to, for me specifically, it's to dismantle so many stigmas around parenting, parenting both living and dead children. In addition to my non-traditional parenthood of advocating, being an activist and an advocate of really creating awareness for stillbirth and prevention. I do wear a lot of hats. Like I mentioned, I'm a California transplant over to Brooklyn, New York. And it has been 6 years since my TJ died. It was May 29th, 2017. And I feel so very fortunate to carry his name every single day forward through experiencing, for sharing our truth and how we hold grief, how I honor him, And in my little blurb, you heard me mention how I honor him every single day, specifically starting each day with a TJ coffee. So I did have to throw that in for my intro, because if you have connected with me on Instagram, I quite often share those TJ morning coffees with the community, and in hopes to uplift or feel connected with others in this space.
Yeah, I love it. I love watching your Instagram and how like it's so, you know, I guess polar opposite to what people would assume a bereaved mother's, grief would look like. Because you're there, you're sort of, it's not like you're sad and you're crying all of the time. Like it's when I love watching your TJ coffees because, you're just being true and authentic and raw and, you're okay. Like this is how grief can play out sometimes. Like you can look completely okay on the outside and you're okay to talk, about your children. And, I love that you can hold that space through social media and show what that looks like on the outside and be okay with actually just, you know, going with the flow and feeling whatever comes up, on that day.
Yeah. Well, so you heard me mention TJ died, it was 6 years ago, and I social media was or has been such a significant source of the way that I've learned to be unapologetic in my parenthood and my grief and all that I hold every single day. I was in the hospital when, I, delivered TJ, and the first thing I did is I grabbed my phone and I started Googling stillbirth. I had no idea what stillbirth was. And on top of that, as a Latina, my family is from Nicaragua. I'm a second generation. I did not see other people on social media like myself. And within the first few months um, after he died, I took the leap to make my own page so that I could connect with others and just kind of navigate my own grief, like the first month. And it's really evolved to be my my griefy diary per se, of sharing so that I can not only feel like I am dismantling any of the stigma that I would have as a grieving parent, right? So it's like people think that grief lasts, we deal with all these platitudes or the gaslighting of, oh, okay, grief is all nice and tidy. Oh, it only lasts a year. But in reality, it's life work, right? It's never ending. It's something that we hold because love is eternal, right? So we go through these different types of phases, and sometimes you can go through a different phase in like one day, right? Or an hour at a time. But I found that the way that I held grief became a little less awful, a little less heavy and unbearable when I shared,
Mhm.
because I felt not only like I was less alone, um, I felt like every time someone sent me a personal message of just like, thank you, I thought I was crazy. It's like, no, thank you. Thank you for saying this, because I sometimes ask myself, like, am I sharing too much? Because I have now evolved to share everything, because I want people to know that there's no one way to do this. Whether you are loud about your grief, or if you're quiet and you keep it close to the chest, whether you advocate for stillbirth or miscarriage or TMFR, like if all these things, if you talk about it all the time, if you share, or you fundraise, all that stuff, it does not determine your parenthood or what type of um, individual you are. Um, And so that's why I talk about it as often as I do on Instagram.
Yeah.
So
And it was like, it's funny because you were like, when you said, you know, women were reaching out saying, thank you for sharing. And so now I feel like I'm not making it up. I'm not crazy. And then it would be also then, like you said, reaffirm. You're like, well, actually, now I know that I'm not crazy because now someone else on the outside of it, me, is feeling the same thing too. And, you know, that was the thing that I always thought, you know, if someone else, like if I'm feeling this, surely someone else has to be feeling this too. Like that was often like that was my questioning through my whole entire healing process.
yeah, and I think for me as a Latina as well, like you heard me mention that I didn't see anyone like me. I didn't see diverse individuals on Instagram grieving out loud. We have a lot of cultural things that we deal with, but another aspect of that is just it wasn't a place of connection. And finally, 6 years now, later, I'm starting to see more diverse individuals that once again reach out and say thank you for sharing because culturally we don't share. And it's like finally you don't feel as well. For me, some of us do not, or I should say I do not feel as crazy as I did for that 6 years ago. Um and I think I wouldn't consider myself healed because healing is for me, I feel like there is an ending to that. And so I feel like for me, specifically in the pandemic, I realized that, this truly is life work.
Mm.
You can't just shut off the grief when everything else is coming at you from all different directions. And I have learned with time to hold the grief and hold the love and all that I have for my TJ differently over the years and during the different seasons now. Um, but I think that that's something that we all have to learn.
And I think that's the thing that time can give you. Like it's, you know, it's never that time heals all wounds. Like that just is not a thing.
Yes.
But what time can give you is the opportunity to start to weave that into you, start
Yes.
to have, like you said, have over those years, you learn and you evolve and you grow how you can hold the grief, the sadness, along with all of the joy that life can also have for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not, you know, it's not the be all and end all. Like when you go through these hard challenges, like it can feel like it can absolutely feel like it's the end of the world,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be. And there is still beautiful things that you can look forward to in your life. So I think that's the thing that time can give you, is how you then start to, you know, um, and I've always sort of said it's like the tapestry of our life, like how we can then start to sew in these different experiences, these different feelings and emotions, and how we can start to like have them on that one piece of tapestry, though, because it's never just the end. It's just another, you know, another piece that we add to it.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing that you said is like their joy is there, and or you can learn to hold that joy. And with time, I have learned that in one instance you can hold so many of those emotions at once, right? So it's not just like the pendulum of like anger and sadness or all these different things, or like or happiness, and then you forget about the reality of things, but like you can really hold multiple emotions at once
Mm.
and still have that yearning for your child that's not there, but still be so happy with the situation that's presented in front of you, but always still be so sad that they're not there in that moment experiencing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that, because it's not ever just like, oh, I'm feeling happiness, and then that's just the only emotion that you feel, and then you get out of that, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling this now. It's you're yeah, you're often holding so many different emotions at the one time, and you're learning then how to, okay, how do I hold all of these emotions all at the one time? Which ones can I give the space to, and which ones can I acknowledge in this moment? And then which ones can I, honor and hold space for at another time?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and like you said before, it's this, healing is never done. It's an ever evolving journey. And like you said, there's no end. It's not a beginning and end. There's no cut and dry place where you're just done grieving and you're healed and that's it. I'm just this healed person now walking around in the world. It's just, that's not realistic. And
It
it's,
is. But it's that perception of like grief as a whole, right? Like that, oh, if this person is smiling after a year, that, oh, they're healed, they're through it. Or just like, just get through this year. It's like, oh, then we're done. No, no, not at
no,
all.
no, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, my dad died when I was 19. So, like, that was my first experience with like immense grief. And it was, yes, the first year is always hard, but then the second year, the third year, like, I was wanting to always talk to him. I was just,
Mhm.
I still would think, oh, I'll just go and ask him these questions. And then I was like, oh crap, I can't. So it's like, it's not that you get through the first year and then you're done and it's good and it's fine. Like, when you've got through the first year, yes, there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in that time, that like milestone moments and things like due dates, or there's a lot of things that can have the potential to trigger you. But there's also a lot of different things then that come in the 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long, out from your loss as well. And how can anyone ever say, oh, okay, just 1 year and you're done? Like, it's okay. It's like after that year, you'll kind of just forget about the fact that you lost your baby, or, you know, whatever it is that you're going through. I'm like, you just don't, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't just magically just, fix itself in your brain and
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
done.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think, and then that's also like, then come the different like platitudes forced upon you by other people too,
Mm.
right? So, oh, if you express like, being sad, maybe you're 2 years out or even like 6 years out, like me, right? People think, oh, you gotta be, or I've been on the receiving end of these quite often. I know a lot of us have been. Oh, you can't be sad. You have to be happy for your living kids. Or, oh, you have to be happy for your partner. Or, you have to be happy for your mom. You don't want your mom to worry about you. So it's like, I think one of the most important things that I always hope to communicate in my sharing on Instagram is the reawakening that I have found, that you have to be unapologetic and true to yourself in your process. You can't be other things for other people. You have to relentlessly establish boundaries, and tell people what they need, what you need from them. And when they have crossed the boundary too far, you have to be open about it. Or then be able to accept, if you don't say something, that you are dimming somewhat of the griefiness that is within you, and that can show up in different ways if you just kind of dim that, or like you say, oh, well, I don't want to correct that person, I'll just shove it down, and you compact it into your body and you keep it there, and then it builds the next time someone else says something, next time, and then you outlash, you say something to someone that's like, it's like imploding, right? And so um that's one of the things that I really hope every time I share with people or anytime that I facilitate with a group is you have to learn how to find your voice in a different way, even if that voice is soft in the early days, or it's really hard to even just establish that what your voice is really trying to say. But if something just doesn't feel right and someone's trying to tell you how to hold your grief, you have to learn eventually with time to establish those boundaries, you know?
Mm. It's so true. And I remember, like, as you were talking, I was like agreeing with everything that you said, because the boundaries, especially after loss, are so huge, because like you said, like, I was a recovering people pleaser. I mean, I can't think I still am to some degree. So it was very hard for me to say no, and or to correct people. Like, if they were saying things that were really hurtful to me, to stop them and say, like, I appreciate what you're trying to say, but I don't need to hear it.
Yeah,
Um, it's not helpful to me right now. Like, and a lot of it was, for me, it was like, oh, at least it happened early. At least your body can fall pregnant. And I was just like, there's a lot of stuff that you're telling me right now that just does not serve me. And
yeah,
I didn't have the capacity to tell them that. And I'd often walk away and go, oh my gosh, I feel so terrible. One, because I said it; two, because I didn't stand up for myself.
yeah,
And that was really hard. And, it's like you said, you just got to you got to find your voice. You have to really listen to what it is that you need, because everything that you said before, like, you've got to be strong for this person and this person, and it's for everyone else but you.
yeah,
And I'm like, what do you actually need? What do you want to do? Like, know what it is that you need, and be that person for you and you alone first,
yeah,
before you're doing anything for anyone else.
yeah. And it's okay to like try, like to maybe not know the right thing at first. And but you say one thing and it's okay to change your mind like 10 different times. Like, I mean, Sharon, and think about how often or in the early days of your losses that, you said yes to an event, like to attend an event, and then you ended up changing your mind 10 times when the event actually happened, and then you ended up not going. But then, you felt guilty, and then you're like, no, like, I'm glad I wasn't there because I would have been a mess, and something as simple as that, right? Or just, deciding not to go to the baby shower of
Yeah.
someone else, right? Or throwing away pictures if you like of invitations or something that do not include your child's name. I mean, I'm guilty of that. If during the holidays, I mean, holidays are coming just around the corner, and actually every single year since he's died, I throw away any card that does not include his name. If they are addressing the entire family, I'm like, I don't want it. And that's fine. That's my firm, hard boundary. And, if people aren't paying attention, then I say that that's, their loss, unfortunately.
Mm. I remember there was one time just after my miscarriage that I was invited to a wedding, and I said yes to the wedding. And I had made a point in my mind. I was like, no, I'll go to the reception. I'm not, sorry, ceremony, but I won't go to the reception. Like, I
Mm,
don't feel up to partying and having drinks and being around people. Like, I don't want to be in that environment, but I'll witness them getting married. And that's what I did. And I went into the ceremony, and then I came home. But it was like I was getting messages from people on my table going, oh, I wish you were here. And they were taking photos of everything. And as much as I knew in my mind, I was like, no, this was what I chose to do. So having them sort of coming at me going, you should be here and you should be enjoying it. And I was like, it kind of put that seed of doubt in me going, well, maybe I should have gone. And then that was that whole, like, I started to question my decision. And I didn't like that, because as I went with the pure intention, I was like, no, this is how I'm going to do it. And then then I started to question my boundary. I wasn't confident in it. And the people pleasing started to come in and go, oh, well, maybe you should have gone. And then I felt guilty for not going.
Yeah.
So it is so hard. I mean, I still stand by that decision to this day. I had to get past that day, that night, into the following day for me to be confident again in my decision.
Yeah.
But it is a really hard place to be in, especially in those early stages, and be confident enough in your decision that whatever anyone else comes at you with, you'll be just like, no, I'm okay. I'm done. Like, I made up my mind. This is what's happening, and I'm okay with that. And
Yeah.
it's such a hard road to walk in those early stages.
It is. And that's why, I think it's important to recognize, like, you can change your mind
Mm,
as many times as you want, but it has to be your decision. And I've had so many people in this community be guilted into doing something that they did not want to do. And it had some serious repercussions of triggers and not like wanting to be around. Maybe it led to like some type of significant, meltdown, or um, it just didn't serve them, right? And it's hard to know what is the right decision with anything in loss, whatever stage you're at, whether it just happened to you today or it happened, 20 plus years. But I read this book by Megan Devine, It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And I read it like the second month after TJ died. And there was this one line that she said in regards to events. And it was something along the lines of choose choose to go to the event or to attend a discussion that doesn't make you want to puke. If it makes you want to puke, then don't go. And I thought about that because for me, I would get like severe anxiety, just like when thinking about like seeing other people and all these different things. So the whole puke thing like resonated with me because I'm like, you get this physical reaction. That's, the whole point of it. Does this resonate? Does this make me have a physical reaction of some sort, thinking about attending or doing or having conversation? And if it does, don't do it. It's not worth it, because that means that you're sacrificing your discomfort for the comfort of other people.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And like, if it doesn't light you up, if it causes you anxiety, like, definitely say no. And that's the thing
Yes.
about with really having to listen to our body and
Mhm.
really understanding what that is for you, and that for you it will look different than, for someone else. But
Yeah.
understanding what that is for you and sticking to that, I to this day I'm glad I didn't go to the reception. Like, it wasn't any, it was just in that moment I was like, oh, maybe I should have gone, maybe. But if I was able to strip away all of the noise, like, my decision was what I wanted to do. And um I probably would have been in that meltdown state.
Yeah,
Like,
probably in the stall or something in the
yeah,
bathroom, and you know,
crying my eyes out. And then, yeah.
yeah,
So I'm just like, no, like, I could, can almost see that playing out. And even to this day, like, I'm sure that's definitely the state that I was in, because that's the choice that I made. I didn't want to be there. But I love that, it sort of just gives you permission to tune into your body and, feel what that feels, asking yourself the question, do I want to be at this place? And feeling those sensations of like, is it, does it make you want to puke? Is it causing you restriction, anxiety? Like, can you feel like your breath's like shortening and you're like starting to go into like this like little panic? Because if that is the case, then yeah, I like how you said you're sacrificing yourself for someone else's comfort, and then that's not honoring you or your healing and recovery and your experience at all.
Yeah, and I mean, it took me a while to be in tune with that and just really be firm on that. I think here in the States, some people aren't granted, some birthing people aren't granted leave um, after you deliver a stillborn child. I fortunately was granted leave. But I mention that solely because, some people cannot avoid some of those situations. It is a privilege in some instances to be able to say that I'm not going to do that. So I don't want to make it seem in our discussion that it's something that you can do right away, or you find navigate your way forward through that, like that it just comes. But it comes with when you're granted that space to process. And I think that that's really important. Um, an important thing that I always like to share, that I recognize that I've had privilege to kind of come through, um, as horrific as my experience is, right? Because my son died, right? That I was granted the space to kind of process before I had to be thrust back into my job. Um, what was that? 18 weeks after he died.
Mm. And it is such a hard place to go back into, because it's almost like then you do have to put on the mask, like, and be
Huh.
a person that you're really not feeling like you can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I guess, in those moments, like if you don't have, like I had a little bit of space too. I think I had 5 weeks off after my miscarriage to be able to process, my grief and my emotions and what was happening. But also to understand like what you can do for yourself, knowing that you have to go back in. What are some things that you can do for yourself? Like, if you anticipate, that anxiousness, that you anticipate having the conversations because people might ask what's happened, how can you be prepared? Like, what can you do for yourself in those moments? Obviously, you don't know the full extent of how it's all going to play out, but what can you do to, plan as much as possible for yourself so that you don't feel so caught off guard, or you don't have the tools to help with that anxiety when you
Yeah.
feel it coming over you going, and then it just, intensifies and gets worse because you don't have the ability to support yourself. Like,
Yeah.
just really being able to plan for yourself to
Huh.
head back in.
Yeah. And that's why I was able to, come back after 18 weeks, because I was given that space to do
Mm.
some of the research. I connected with Return to Zero Hope, which is ironically one of the charities that I support now, but they have a fantastic free resources on their website for birthing people at various phases of where they're at. So whether you're in the hospital, whether you're returning back to work, if you are a family or friends, some terrific resources. And um, through doing that research and using them as support, I found that um, having a key person um, at your employer to communicate, resources. How do you communicate with her? What are some topics that may be sensitive? Um, Fortunately, I had a tremendous boss who was just fantastic. I sent him some resources. I sent him how I wanted to make the announcement to my entire team of TJ. And So I felt like I was really supported and I was listened to along the way. Um, and really had to explore different tips and tricks of, when I felt the anxiety come up, and I had to leave. So I always had to have like an exit plan, like in different situations that I was in, because I knew I was going to go to a meeting. Okay, where's this meeting going to be? Okay, it's going to be in Midtown Manhattan. Okay, I'm going to be right next to this place, and that place. Does that place have a bathroom? Does it have a nice bathroom that I could go escape to if I need to? And then it's like, okay, do I have my Kleenex and do I have my eyeliner? All these different things. But it's anticipating, and it's never perfect. And it's important to know that communicating is so essential. We don't have to be these strong people. We don't. I actually hate that word strong. I don't consider myself strong. I wasn't given a choice in all of this. But we have a choice of how we show up. And if it's not aligned with how we want to feel that day, if the anxiety feels too much, you have to communicate that to people. And if they receive it well or not, that's something that you have to like work through, right? If meaning like if you have a not a supportive team, then you may need to reevaluate if you want to be there, right? So for me, fortunately, my team was supportive, and I would talk to them and say, "This is too heavy for me. I cannot attend this meeting. I need to leave right now." And they'd be like, "Okay, I have you covered." But once again, that's a privilege, and I fully recognize that. So if I not been supported, I most definitely would have left.
Mm. It is. I mean, loss makes you reevaluate um, a lot of the environments that you are in, whether they are supportive, a lot of the people that you're around, if they are supportive. And you really do have to question whether or not it is, in your best interest to continue,
Mm,
or if it is a toxic environment and it's not going to be supportive. Um, I love how you said, to find a spokesperson for you if your obviously workplace is open to that, to the communication, because I think assumption can be like it, assumption is like the devil. Like you can't just assume that someone's going to know, or you can't just assume that everything's going to be okay and that person's just going to know what's happened, or they're going to know how you feel, because they don't. And unless you physically communicate what it is that you're going through,
yeah,
that no one actually knows.
yeah,
Um, so I love that you were able to communicate yourself, what you needed directly even to your boss, and how you kind of wanted it to play out. Because I think a lot of people would be like, oh, no, I can't do that. But,
yeah,
you know, there's no harm in trying either. There's no harm in just going, you know what, this is what I feel like I need right now. I need them to know this. Communicate that. And then hopefully it is received well. But like you said, sometimes that might not be. And that's another time where you'll be just like, okay, you reevaluate, like, what is it that I actually need and want right now? Is this going to be conducive to my healing? Can I keep putting myself in this situation, this work environment? Um, but what you said was just so important, just that communication piece. It's just, I think it can be so underrated sometimes just to say what you're feeling, but it's so, so valuable and so important.
yeah. And we carry so much, and I would love for all of it, to be able to go away after. But I'd be lying to you. We'd be lying to you if we said it, went away. But it being able to communicate can support you, or it should support. Well, I wish it was guaranteed, but it can support you in a situation that could be very difficult emotionally, in a professional setting, right? So it makes it, always having that exit plan is always a big one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, always having to know, like, and that's it. Like, when you feel that sense of overwhelm and you just don't want to be where you are right in that moment, you're like, how can I get myself to a bathroom and, or somewhere where you can just go and gather yourself and do whatever it is that you need to do and then come back. Um, and yeah, having that exit plan. And
Yeah, and there's
it's
no shame in
fine.
that also.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no shame in that also. There's nothing. I mean, after all, you have experienced some horrific reality, of your child loss.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's where I think, because, child loss, baby loss, pregnancy loss, like at whatever point you had your experience, it's so important to understand that it is a big deal. Like if you feel like it's big for you, it is big. And if you feel like it's a traumatic experience, it is. It doesn't have to be that you've been in this massive car accident for it to be understood as trauma. Like
Yeah.
you've lost your baby, like your baby has died, like that is trauma. And if you feel like that is a big thing for you, then it is. And you can respond the way that you feel like you need to in those moments.
Yeah. Well, even here in the States, we're starting to see some companies give um, miscarriage leave, which is great. I mean, any, not very much time whatsoever. I heard you mention that you had 5 weeks. I think that's great. I would have loved for you to have more if you wanted that, right? I think everyone's entitled to have more time. But my whole point of bringing that up is that it's, if you are the one that's entitled to hold whatever type of relationship you want with the type of loss that you had, right? It's
Mm.
no one else should make you feel anything. It has to be determined by you.
Mm.
And my hope is that you are able to feel supported and you're given that space, whether your company gives it to you or not. Um, and that's the biggest thing,
Mm.
right? To be able to um, know that your love and your grief, you're entitled to that grief, that the love that you have from your experience and your child and your
Yeah.
pregnancy.
I was I pretty much just told my work that I wasn't coming back for a period of time. It was unpaid leave. I didn't get anything, like I wasn't
Mm.
compensated for it. Um, because it wasn't sick leave or anything like that. It was just, I wanted the time, so I took it. And that was it. Like I just had to, you know, grin and bear the fact that I wasn't going to be paid for that period of time. Um, but for my mental and physical health, like I needed it. There was no way
Yeah,
that I felt like I could go back and do my job
of course.
um to to any sort of sense of, doing, the work that I was doing. I couldn't have done a good job like going back because I would have been so preoccupied.
Of course.
Um, so I listened to what it was that I needed, and I kind of just kept asking for time as I went along. I'm like, no, I think I need another week. I need another week. And then it came to the point where I was like, no, I think I can go back. I think if I was to go back now, I could do my job. Um, and I could talk about it if I needed to. So I kind of just asked myself questions as I went along, like, can I do this?
Yeah.
Do I feel up to this? And if I said no, then I would take some more time because I didn't want to go back sort of half-hearted in a way and not honoring myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not. I think they've got miscarriage leave here in Australia too, but I think it's only a couple of days,
Mm.
or it might be like 3 or 4 days. It's not
Yeah.
long, like you said. And it's definitely not long enough to sort of process the grief that you're experiencing.
Uh,
Um, I was lucky that I had a boss that was okay. He might have said he was okay, but whether or not he was actually okay with me taking that time, and having to find someone to cover me all the time was a different story. But he said he was okay for me to take it. So I was lucky in that sense that I wasn't forced back to my job. But yeah, just like to some degree, I was able to communicate like what was happening for me. I didn't actually think to communicate, once I got back, like what I would need, but I kind of was able just to sort of, as I went along, communicate what I was feeling, if I felt like I could go back or not. But yeah, I know I love everything that you've said too, like in terms of really just as sort of advocating for yourself, just understanding what it is that you need and communicating that with other people.
Yeah, I think that that's, the biggest, when I when I reflect of like what I'd like to share with the community here, it's, really trying finding your voice and communicate what you need. And it's okay to not know what you need, but know what doesn't feel right. And I think that that's the big thing. Like, know what does not feel right and feel like you can say no if it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I love all of your advocacy for stillbirth. I love that you're so present and so seen in that space. And you do have a beautiful presence in terms of, how you show up, how you talk about TJ, how you want to see that change in the stillbirth, in stillbirth awareness and stillbirth support. Did you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you do in those
So,
areas?
yeah, well, I'll give my few minutes. So in the intro you shared that stillbirth affects over 23,000 birthing people in the States each year, which is horrific. It actually has not improved um, for a handful of years. It's getting worse. And it's absolutely ridiculous that here in our day and age that it's not decreasing. A lot of that comes from lack of awareness. Um, uh, we have found through various studies that over 40% of those 23,000 families or birthing people, excuse me, are preventable stillbirths. So my son, I would learn through working with a doctor that his death was preventable or could have been preventable, I should say. So really, I am a part of what we would like to refer to as a stillbirth coalition of birthing parents that are fed up with the lack of advancement here in the States of attention for stillbirth awareness, stillbirth research. And we have joined through we found a Push for Empowered Pregnancy, which is our charity name. And we actually just celebrated our 2nd year anniversary in June. And we are committed to decreasing preventable stillbirth here in the States. So we do that on a volunteer basis. So there's about 7 other birthing people on our director team. And yeah, we try and unite as many people, different stillbirth organizations across this country so we can make some noise and really work with some of these organizations that have decision-making power to make improvements.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love, I mean,
I know
it's
that was a
hard.
mouthful.
Yeah, no, it's hard to say, I love it. I love that you're in this space and making the noise because, like you said, there is so many bereaved parents out there who are suffering and who don't have the support or the answers and stuff that they need. And And like you said, 40% is a huge number that could be.
Significant. It's absolutely disgusting that that still happens in 2023, right? It's
Yeah.
absolutely heartbreaking that this is a reality, you know? So we are part of this coalition because we're fed up and we're not going to let this happen to more people.
Yeah. And I love it. And you
So
definitely,
unapologetic. You can get the
yes.
vibe from all of us.
Yes, be unapologetic in your values and what you believe in. Um, and unapologetic in your grief and emotions and stuff as well. Like the whole across the board, just be you and be raw
Yeah.
um and use your voice. Like if you can, like you said, if you have the capacity, it's okay to do all of that in silence and just to be the person that absorbs it all in, but that's okay. But if you have the capacity, you can use your voice too and be unapologetic in that and taking the stand and showing what life is like. And I love that you've been able to take that one step further as well and just really trying. I know that it will happen. You will make the change that you want to see. We just have to stay true to the course and keep pushing and keep
Yeah.
showing up and keep raising your voice, and it will be seen, it will be
Yes.
noticed.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and that's, I'm so appreciative of you giving us this space to talk about stillbirth and just grief and pregnancy loss. And, it's important. So
Mm.
thank you so much for helping get our word out there.
You're so welcome. I needed to, like you said, we spoke about before we jumped on, like we connected a little while ago. And then when I launched the podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to reach back out to you. And I love how you show up so in a way confidently on social media. Like, and I think like we've used those unapologetic and raw and authentic, like everything about you is true and it's not filtered, and it's like what you see is kind of what you get, and you talk so from the heart. So I was like, I needed to get you in and talk about it on the podcast. um I just wanted to touch on one more thing before we wrapped up too, because I know we've been going for a little bit. But just the in parenting, I know it's hard to it might be hard for women to understand how to parent the baby that has died. Do you want to share just a little bit about how you have been able to do that for yourself?
Yeah, it's evolved over the years. You heard me mention TJ would be 6. He 6 this past May. And from the early days right on, I always spoke to him. And I start every single day the second that I open my eyes and I connect with him and I say, "Hi, TJ." And I look at his picture and I tell him I hope he has a good day, or I hope today's is a good one. And something as simple as that, just starting my day intentionally with him. And that's, a big part of the coffee, and is another aspect of that. I have his space in our apartment. I create a physical space for him. And another aspect of the way that I parent him and how we have our own relationship is I connect with his colors. His color for is an emerald for May. And so I have a lot of green items, whether it's jewelry. And I feel like every time I um, have these little element or these like necklaces or earrings close by, that he's with me. And I am the way that I parent him obviously is very different from his living siblings, but we have kept his memory alive as well. We talk about him all the time. We have his pictures around. We have different art that represents him. We talk about the advocacy work that I do with Push for Empowered Pregnancy and Return to Zero Hope, so that his siblings know that that's because of him, and they know about they're very young still, but they know about stillbirth, and so they know that all the different things that we do is because of in honor of him. So really, I feel like a lot of my space here on Instagram specifically is also an aspect of keeping his memory alive and parenting him in a way. Um, and I try to share that because sometimes it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. I wish I would say, it's easy. It's not. It's hard.
Mm.
And sometimes, I mean, there's no perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Just sort of
I
listening
just
in.
try and make space for like all that shows up in that moment, right? I can be sad and give his siblings a big hug.
Mm.
So it's that duality of things again.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to show your emotion in front of like the living siblings as well, like for them to see that it's, that you're upset and it's okay. I think that's where a lot of women maybe feel it's hard because they're like, I have to be strong because I can't show the emotion for the others. But you can show them that it's normal to cry when you're upset. You can show them that also that when you do cry, that it doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
That pain, it moves through you, and then at some stage, like, you will be okay again. And they need to
Yeah.
see that. And
Yes.
I love what you do. I love your vulnerability. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you have shared with us today.
Yes. Anytime. Anytime.
Um, do you want to share a little bit about where people can find you?
Yes. Well, you heard me mention Instagram. I am stillbirth mama fighting for light. And that's probably the best way to find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I know Sharna and you and I connected a little while ago as well. So I know you have a presence on LinkedIn as well. So you can connect with me there. Um, and I encourage you to also follow Push for Empowered Pregnancy on Instagram. I support occasionally on social media. So if you need to get a hold of me or any resources, you can send a DM there. And I also support Return to Zero Hope. So on IG, it's RTZ Hope. I had to think about that one for a second.
It's different when
So
you
thank
say it.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But
That,
thank you and the community so much for having me as a guest.
oh, you're so welcome. And I'll make sure that all of what you've said is linked in um, with the show notes as well, so that you can find Dominique wherever she is and reach out to her and follow her and see the magic that she is on social media.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, community.
Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.